Now there's a couple of ways that we can figure out where the image will appear. The best way to really see that picture in your head is to draw what's called a ray diagram. You are going to need to know these rules so that you can draw the ray diagrams for yourself. And those diagrams show three very specific light rays. The first ray passes from the top of the object itself through the center of the lens, the very, very center, and it doesn't get refracted at all. A second light ray will start off parallel to the optical axis, and I'll show you a picture of that in a moment. And then after it goes through the lens, passes through the far focal point. Far focal point being the one on the opposite side of the lens from where the object is. And then the third ray, a light ray passes through the near focal point, so the one on the same side of the lens as the object, and then emerges from the lens parallel to that optical axis. Now let's look at what that actually looks like. So over here we have the general setup. We have a line to illustrate the optical axis. Notice that it goes horizontally through the center of our pictured lens. And then we have the lens itself, which we can draw using just a line, or in this case we have the little edges of our concave lens. Notice that we also have a focal point marked on both sides, and the distance from the center of the lens to that focal point will be equal on both sides of the lens. And then we have an object. The simplest object to represent in a ray diagram is to just draw an arrow, and in this case the arrow is pointing up. Now the first ray will start at the tip of that arrow, the very top of the arrow, and it's going to pass right through the very exact center of that lens. And notice the center meaning where this lens line and the optical axis cross. So your first ray is going to go straight through that point, starting from the top of your object directly through the middle of it. Notice the second ray here starts at the top again, but it goes parallel to that axis until it hits the lens line. Once it hits the lens line, it's going to refract, and it will go directly through that focal point on the opposite side of the lens. So here these two have crossed, and we're going to have a pretty good idea of where the image will appear. But just to be safe, we'll go ahead and draw in the third ray as well, which again starts at the top of the object. This time passes through the focal point on that side of the lens until it hits the lens itself. Then will refract and go parallel to the optical axis. And then we've drawn in here the image. That's not an arrow pointing to something, that's the image itself. Notice that it is smaller than our original object, that it is inverted, so it's upside down, which makes it real. Real images appear where the actual light rays come together. So it is a real inverted image that is smaller than our object.